the record reflect all members are present. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first on the agenda is open forum. Anybody here for open forum? No, I'm gonna move this because I feel like it's in your guys' way. I should have moved it back. Perfect.
Please state where you live.
Appreciate that. All right. Number one on the agenda is approval of minutes. Number one, consider approving the minutes of the regular meeting of the Wyoming, Minnesota City Council for January 21st, 2025. There are no questions or comments. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Member Onstad. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Luger. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. Number two, consider approving the minutes of the work session of the Wyoming, Minnesota City Council for January 21st, 2025. There are no questions or comments. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Member Schilling. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Onstad. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. Consent agenda number 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Does anybody wish to pull an item on the consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll need a motion to approve the consent agenda number 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion by Member Onstad. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Luger. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So passed. Acknowledge receipts of reports, officer boards, commissions, and department heads. Number 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Does anybody wish to pull anything off of the reports? No? Seeing none, we'll move on to communications. Number 13, Minnesota Law Enforcement Accreditation Program, MINLEAP. Chief Bauer?
Yes. One second. Mayor Iverson, members of council, this is just a informational section here, just to give you an update on the state of Minnesota has been looking at an accreditation process for law enforcement. It's actually being done through the Chiefs Association. An accreditation essentially is a set of standards that the agency would be asked to participate in and upheld along the way. The Chiefs Association just is releasing this year. They got a grant last year to start this process. There are national accreditations as well, and I'll touch on why we're looking at going in this direction. But a couple reasons why we would look at doing this accreditation process is it's an objective, neutral acknowledgement of approval. So essentially it reinforces the credibility of the agency practices and the professionalism of our staff. Has the potential to mitigate litigation exposure. If we're adhering to proven best practices, we potentially reduce our risk of legal challenges. It ensures that we're maintaining high standards through continual evaluation and adaptation and a greater accountability, both within the agency and to the public, and increased community support. If we maintain these benchmarks, just maintaining the community confidence that we already have, but looking to just continue to improve that along the way. As I mentioned, there are national accreditation programs like CALEA. CALEA is a great program. It's extremely expensive and high staff hours to get it done. We don't have the staff to meet that. Small agencies like ours generally can't make that happen. It is, in general, not done in Minnesota. For whatever reason, along the way, the CALEA process just has not been adopted for many agencies. But there was a desire to have an accreditation that was specific to Minnesota, and the Chiefs Association took this process on. Essentially, they would provide a person from the Chiefs Association would help walk us through that process. A lot of the policy changes that we've gone through with Lexipol over the last year, 2 years, have really helped move us in the right direction anyway. But this would just allow us to essentially provide a standard of policies, behaviors, on a list of things that would say, yes, we're meeting this accreditation process. Relatively low cost because it does have this grant funding behind it. Initial cost is $1,200 and then $600 on an ongoing basis. So it's low cost. There's some technology that would be attached to it, but they have grants available to cover that for our size agency as well. So the application process is going to open up. I have expressed our interest in it, so I haven't been in communication with them, but this is just a heads up at this point. Any questions or concerns that you might have, I just want to make sure you're informed along the way.
So Chief Bauer, with the 1,200 and the 600 ongoing, something you'll budget for, or is
Yes.
there going to continue to be, is there a grant process for the 1,200 to start, or?
There's not a grant process for that. There's a grant for the technology that's attached to it to maintain your policies and communicate with the accreditation process. So that there's a grant process, and they would intend on maintaining that on an ongoing basis.
Okay, and is this, so you apply for it, how many departments do they allow to work together in
I
1
think-
year?
Yeah, sure, sorry I interrupted. I think they're looking at trying to do as many as possible. I think there's a huge interest, so we'll see. I don't know that they have a confirmed number of departments that are interested at this point, but I did ask that, and they said we're hoping to get everyone on board that is interested on the front end, so.
And do you go to an actual classroom, or all of this is done online, so our officers do it online, or you do it?
It would be in our department, and then the specialists from this MinLead program would come out and work with us on site and as well as online. There'd be a lot of interaction as well.
Okay, that's all my questions. Let's start with Member Yeager.
No questions.
Member Schilling?
I don't have any questions.
Member Onstad?
Just curious if the amount that we pay, the 1,200 and the 600 annual, is that different for different sized cities, or is
Yes.
that just a?
Yeah, it is on up to, for 100 officers plus, it would be 5,000 and then 2,000 per year. So it's a sliding scale based on number of officers.
That's good.
We're in the lowest end, yeah.
Okay. Any
That was
other
it.
questions? Okay, and Member Luger?
Just super nerdy question. Is, you're talking about a representative coming out and doing like the assessment and whatnot, is there like a standardized tool that they use, or is it the
Yes.
same representative who comes out and says, I'm already familiar with what they've been doing, and how does self-assessment work?
Sure, so they have spent the last year researching all of the other state accreditation process across the country, and also worked with Post Board and all these other agencies to come up with what are the best practices that are specific to Minnesota. So the Post Board already holds us to a higher standard than a lot of other states, so we're already a leg up in some regards. So they've spent the last year coming up with what are these best practices, what are the standards that we want to have out there for law enforcement agencies in Minnesota, and then they have a panel of community members, sheriffs, chiefs, those three, I think the stakeholder groups, that all contributed to this process in coming up with these standards along the way.
Okay. Then my only other question is, just like across the state of Minnesota, we know that it's been difficult, like law enforcement in general has been difficult in terms of hiring. While this doesn't happily impact us right now, do you anticipate that this has some, like this is a draw for departments in terms of hiring? Like, do candidates look at this and go, this is a perk? Or not a
Sure.
perk, but like a feature, not a glitch, I guess.
I would say it might be more of a draw for like a lateral or someone leaving one department to go to another, or it might be for like a chief's position, knowing that what you're kind of walking into an accredited department would already have these standards in place. I don't know that a 22-year-old is going to be all that excited one way or the other about accreditation, to be honest.
Okay. Fair.
Just to be
That's
honest,
fair.
yeah. They want to drive fast and, yeah.
One last question, that $600 ongoing, what is that for? And can you stop at any time?
Sure, yep, you can withdraw at any point, and that the annual fee is, once you've done the work up front, then it's just maintaining or any changes in those benchmarks that would be, you would just making those adjustments along the way. So it's a heavier investment on the front end, more time on their part, and then ongoing, it would just be maintaining.
Okay, perfect. There are no other questions. We'll move along and appreciate the update.
Thank you.
New business number 14, to consider the addition of an EMS responder classification within the Wyoming Fire Department. Chief Bauer, I'm assuming that's you?
Yes, that's me as well. We've discussed this last year at, I believe it was a work session, but looking to add or reclassify existing positions from firefighter to this EMS responder. As you know, it's been difficult recruiting, maintaining the numbers that we're hoping to have within the fire department. That lower 30s is kind of that where we're hoping to be. We're always maintaining somewhere in that 21, 24. The majority of our calls are EMS related. We're first responding, whether it's for medicals or traumatic injuries, those type of things. And what we're hoping to do with this position is tap into community members that may be already an EMT, already a paramedic, and they want to contribute in this way, but don't want to be a firefighter. Up until this point, we haven't been able to accommodate that. The Relief Association and Chief Milligan spent last 6 months or so trying to figure out a way to make this work. They've done awesome work. This came from them. It's a great idea for us to have people be available to just respond to medicals. They would not be required to attend fire training. They would only be required to attend training that's related to medical response. So it's a reduced commitment and training. But also, this is a huge need for us. This is a big part of our call volume, and I don't have the percentage off the top of my head, but the understanding is that they would be able to respond to medicals, whether it's crashes, potentially fire scenes, because there is some medical response there needed as well for rehab for firefighters. Looking at bringing them in at $15 an hour with an increase to $18 an hour upon completion of probation. Down the road, we would like to consider looking at providing some training, whether, if they come in as a EMR, which is the lowest level of official training, could we send them to an EMT? It's a relative minimal cost. It's not a ton of hours, just to look at trying to incentivize that increased training as well. So again, this is not additional positions, but we'd like to get this posted officially to try and recruit these EMS responders into the department.
All right, let's start with questions from Member Onstad.
Woody, can you explain how a call goes out now versus how we want to look in the future? I assume that right now we just, on any kind of emergency call, we just send our response team. In the future, would it look different?
So they all receive the call via an app, the I Am Responding app. So they're able to look at it and determine, is this going to require a medical response? Is this the medical situation, or is it just a fire response? They would indicate whether they're going to respond or not, and respond accordingly. So, we still, it wouldn't change necessarily how we respond. It would change what the makeup of that crew is and give us additional people to be available, especially we're hoping during the day that there might be additional pools, paramedics, other firefighters in other cities. They may, work shift work, these other things, then they might be available during the day, and we're hoping to tap into that group as well.
That's good information for the residents to know.
Yeah.
That's the only question.
Okay. Member Luger?
Just question about the hourly rate. What was the rationale that went into 15 and then 18?
It's consistent with the firefighter rate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was an agreement with the Relief Association, and I was not part of that discussion. I don't know, Mr. Linwood, if that was part of anything you guys discussed, but that was, it's a big part of our department, honestly, and they kind of wrestled with where do they fit into the Relief Association, that was the biggest hurdle in this, and they came up with this, and everyone agreed to it. Everyone was on board, so it really is up to them as far as how that goes, so.
Yeah, I think just to surmise Chief Bauer, I think that was something as far as the Relief Association, as many departments are, that number keeps going up, and how would that fit this position particularly if they were going to be eligible for that relief or not be? But I think that was a conversation that the board really worked through, and I think from what I've seen from that board, the relief, and I don't interact with the department as much as Chief Bauer, but I think everyone is really excited about this, and it's a great way to fill some of those potential voids we have with firefighters right now. So I think really positive response from everyone, so I think that's exciting on this. And really, like Chief Bauer said, a great idea that they came up with on this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Member Yeager?
All right, so will EMT training be required eventually?
What the initial is just EMR, that's the standard right now. So that's the old first responder is what it was called, the same as law enforcement, what that was required. So we are looking, you know, the EMT training just enhances the abilities and the skill set for them down the road. It's not a requirement, but it's a way that we can improve the skill set for our responders.
Okay, so say I'm having a heart attack and this person comes. What can this person do for me besides just give me CPR and wait for an EMT to come, or?
No, the ambulance service in our area is staffed with usually a paramedic, unless there could be an EMT truck, but usually it's a paramedic. They have the rescue vehicle that they would respond with, same as our fire department does now. So that's the same level of training as our fire department does right now. Some are EMTs, some are EMR, emergency responders. So they have the ability to use the equipment that's in the vehicle. EMT just has additional levels of certification they can perform as well.
Like what do they, I mean, I'm here having my heart attack. So these guys would just come in and just give me CPR and that's it? And then anything further, I'd have to get to the hospital or wait for an EMT, or? I never had the privilege of having somebody come to my house.
The ambulance would still be dispatched. It doesn't replace the ambulance.
Okay.
It's additional responders that, if you are having, somebody goes into cardiac arrest,
Yeah,
it is not two people, we need more resources than that. So doing CPR is physically strenuous. You can't do CPR for 15, 20 minutes on your own. They're in the city, the ambulance may be coming from 12, 15 minutes away. That's the reality of the service we provide here. The medic could be coming from a distance away. Our cops would be dispatched, our fire department would be dispatched. There are some medicals that require 5 to 6 responders based on the need, and that the ambulance doesn't come with 5, 6 people. So as it is right now, nothing would change. It's just we have additional people that are available
Okay.
beyond just the 20-some firefighters.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Member Schilling?
I don't have any questions. My close friend growing up, his mom, because we lived in North Branch, she was one of these first responders on call for the
Sure.
fire department, so I'm in favor of it. I think it's an added body. I think it increases a quicker time response if, you know, it's somebody local before the actual ambulance gets on
Sure.
site. Paramedics, but yeah, I don't have any questions. I'm fine with it. I think it's a good idea for us, you know, and it also deepens our bench as well. So.
Great, thank you.
So recently had some people help my hubby not too long ago. So I believe there was 3 of our fire department that arrived, and then EMT arrived, right? So what I'm understanding this position to be is the EMR or the EMR person is basically, they're not going to the training of firefighters, they're not going to fires, they're
Correct.
specifically medical,
Correct.
right? So would we need as many fire personnel to show up as well? It'll still be the same, right? That kind of same,
You wouldn't, as a patient or as a family member, you wouldn't notice the difference one
Yeah.
way or the other. They're still wearing the same,
same stuff,
yep, doesn't look any
acting the
different.
same way.
The community wouldn't have any idea
Yeah.
that they don't have a firefighter training.
Okay,
That's it.
perfect.
It's
That's
just-
the
it
big
just is-
difference.
Yes, exactly.
Perfect,
And
okay.
it's just, we have, hopefully, we have more of these that are available.
Yeah.
Not everyone wants to run into a fire.
Right,
I
I
don't.
don't.
So, but I was also a paramedic.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that side of it. So
Yeah.
you could see how that role
Yeah.
could fit some people. And up until this point, we haven't been able to, our community members that want to help in that way can't do that.
Yeah.
So this affords that opportunity for our
Okay, I
community
think
members.
that's awesome. And my only other question would be mental health for these people as well, right? Because they're gonna
Yep.
run into some things that aren't great.
Yeah, we've
right?
been working, I met with the fire command staff, it's probably a month ago, starting to brainstorm what wellness looks like for them. We've done a lot of work within the PD.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And starting to figure out what does this look like for our fire and EMS as well.
Okay.
Because it is a concern, it's something,
Yeah.
but it has to be approachable. I don't want to force things that aren't going to work for them.
Yeah.
So I really want them to drive the bus on
Yeah,
that.
okay, that makes total sense. So we need a motion to approve the addition of an EMS responder classification within the Wyoming Fire Department. I'll make the first. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Onstad. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. Number 15, to consider advertising for a full-time Public Works maintenance worker position. And I believe we are going to go to Mr. Reeves on this one.
Yes, correct. Thank you, Mayor. We were there through the 2023 rate study and the 2024 budget process approved by council in December. We have an opening, hoping to have an opening for FTE, and we would like to advertise the position to the public for to gather applicants and consider hiring somebody.
Okay. Questions from council? We'll start, I think, Member Luker.
Yeah, just confirming, this was included in the 2025 budget.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
That's all I got.
All right.
Thank you.
Member Yeager.
How much time would this worker be spending on utilities?
Equally as much as everybody else is.
Quantify, please.
They'll be on the on-call rotation, so every seventh week, they will be working in the utility full-time, and then sporadically throughout the rest of the weeks, taking care of different duties on the utility side, water and wastewater.
Okay, because with the starting salary, and according to the rate study, $50,000 comes out of the utility funds. Of that, if your starting salary, basically 81% of the salary is being paid by utility. So am I going to have, as a utility ratepayer, am I going to have this person 81% of the time doing utilities, or is it going to be spread out doing a lot of other things?
I don't think the 81% is equal of the actual employment, because you're going by the wage, not the total compensation and benefits of the employee. So I don't necessarily know if the 81% is accurate.
Since my memo did not include the value of the compensation, I had to make do with
Understood.
50,000 over the starting salary of 62,000, sorry.
Understood.
Yeah, because, like I said, as a utility ratepayer, I'm not totally comfortable with the employee, doing everything else and, pay them out of the general fund. That's just me. I'm not comfortable with hiring an extra employee simply because the city isn't growing very much. I was looking at the state demographer with if our census was 88,000, I think it was 92, and then for 2023, the state demographer had it at 8147. We're not growing so much, and expanding departments when you're not growing, this doesn't seem like a good idea to me. And also, I need a better reason to hire somebody than the utility rate study said so. Because when people ask me, what extra is this person going to do? Well, they're gonna do what the regular maintenance person does, but it's because the utility rate study says so, then they start laughing at me.
Okay.
I think that's a little.
Councilmember, just to point that out, you did approve that rate study that had that position inclusionary
Oh,
in it.
I know, but just because I voted for the rate study didn't mean I voted for the position too.
Understood, but that was all inclusionary in that study, just for the record.
I read the rate study many times, yes, I know that, but like I said, just
Okay.
because it's in there,
No,
I
just wanted to make sure that was clear, that was inclusionary.
oh, yeah.
Member
So-
Schilling?
I don't have any questions.
Okay. Mr. Erickson, I actually have a question for you regarding this. So, when we became a city of 5,000, and then we had a lot of different things that we had to do in terms of, is it MS4? I'm trying to remember all the
Yeah.
verbiage and stuff, right? So as we increased our population, what was needed from Public Works is probably a lot greater than what it was at 5,000 or 6,000 or 7,000, correct?
That is correct. Mayor, your recollection is quite good. It is.
Okay.
We have become a MS4 city when
Yeah.
we had a number of different factors with our population and some of our impaired water bodies. And so there are additional unfunded mandates, right, that we encounter in reporting and various structures within other agencies as well, additional reporting, other types of things that come into play that do impact public works staff from maybe earlier years. You're correct.
Okay. And the miles of roads that we have added on in the last 10 years, would you say, if we had to add more mileage, and you know what Public Works is doing in terms of plowing and stuff too? I mean, what would that be?
Yeah, I don't recall the numbers. It's definitely miles, though we've had some developments. We're both not just roadways, but it includes additional maybe lift stations, right? Or we have additional water main infrastructure, sanitary sewer infrastructure, storm sewer, stormwater ponds. And so there certainly is additional infrastructure that they're responsible for as well.
Okay. So as we go, you know, I see us into about almost 9,000 in the next couple of years, roughly. That's in my brain. You almost have to increase staff in order to provide the amount of service that our residents are expecting. And if we don't have enough employees, what happens?
We don't get to everything that needs to get done, and I'd personally rather add on the front end and be ready than try to play catch up afterward while you have new residents who are coming in and dissatisfied with the level of service that they're getting from the outset.
Okay, and we've had the same employees for a long time. They've worked for the city a long time. Are there any possible retirements kind of down the road that you're planning for that can train some of the newer people?
Yeah, some institutional knowledge transfer will be helpful on that. There are some retirements that will eventually happen. As much
Yeah.
as people would love to work forever, I don't think that they will.
That's very true.
I do have the infrastructure. No, I don't have comparatives, but I do have mileage and linear feet for water, sewer, that kind of stuff,
Okay.
if you're interested in that.
But we're growing, in other words, and it does take more hands-on deck, basically, to kind of take care of the infrastructure and things that we need for water, sewer, roads, all of that, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, that's all my questions. Anybody else last?
Great
No?
question. Just as we're growing too, we're gonna need people working on some of this infrastructure even before we get the population in. Because the houses need to go in first, the sewers need to go in first, then the people come second. So that would be a fair qualification.
Yes,
Okay.
correct, thank you.
All right, so we need a motion to approve advertising for a full-time public works maintenance worker position. Do we have a first?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Member Luker. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Onstad. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
So approved. Number 16, to consider Resolution 250214, a resolution authorizing the preparation of a feasibility study for the 2025 street improvement project. Mr. Erickson?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. Just to step back a little bit, you may recall we did our street ratings here in 2024, and for the most part completed that in the fall. I know Public Works staff reviewed in detail and have a couple of comments on that we'll address and bring back to the city council a detailed street rating. As you might expect, we did incorporate all the new roadways, and we did identify roads continue to deteriorate, right? No surprise there, right? So we do have results. We did this a little differently than we have in the past. We used to have a person go out and rate and count the distresses in the roadway. This we used AI, and so it actually maps them. So we have a truck-mounted camera, and it picks up all the distresses in the roadway, and so we actually can have them all mapped now as well, and really see it. It's really pretty amazing. And so the ratings, we're holding our own, right? We're not drastically improving them, because all those that we fix, we have more that are deteriorating, right? So we're really pretty much holding our own, and so we're pleased with that. But I did want to highlight again what we utilize that for. And so one, we develop a capital improvements plan from that, and we'll be bringing that forward in the coming months as well for council to look at and consider. But we're a little behind in this process, so we feel we really have a project selected. We kind of narrowed it down to a couple, and we really have a project selected. But again, we use it to develop CIP, develop projects, and then funding evaluations. So we did work with Mr. Linwood and a financial consultant to kind of update that model with what we're seeing. And we know, right, just like every city out there, we don't have enough resources for the needs that are there, right? And so we need to be really wise and cautious and utilize good judgment in how we select projects. So how do we select them, right? We don't pull out the manual and just have it tell us what to do, right? We use judgment. We look at a lot of different factors. How are the roads performing that we rated previously? How is the patching that we've done? How is that holding up as well? And then really, do we want to look at a worse first type scenario, right? We have roadways that you'll see that are in worse condition than those that we're selecting for this year, right? And so the patching, the work on those might require some additional work on those, but it's not going to change, right? Those already require a full reconstruction or a full depth pavement replacement. The Hawk Meadows neighborhood is one that has been patched excessively due to some shallow potholes, due to various surface conditions. And so we are recommending moving forward with that in lieu of waiting on that and losing the opportunity to have a lesser expense type of project. So we can look at a mill and overlay type improvement and really save about half the cost, right? So we're not able to, we're not gonna jeopardize losing this roadway in favor of, you know, fixing a roadway that's not gonna change how we improve it the following year or the following year after that. So we really feel like this is the appropriate fix for that. We also looked at a number of other factors. One, we know that our state aid balance is pretty minimal, and so we can't tackle really our state aid road projects because we advance encumbered for our East Viking project and our Fallbrook project in 2023. Now that fund is getting reimbursed, you know, over $500,000 a year, and so we'll be in a position where we'll be able to utilize state aid funds very soon, right? Whether we have a full balance or we can advance encumber again because we're getting through that negative balance, so we can always accrue up to or advance encumber up to 5 times our annual accrual. So we feel like we have a project coming down the road there, but we can't utilize it yet, right? So that is a factor in it. We know that the Trunk Highway 8 project is going to tackle a couple of our projects on there that were on the periphery of that Highway 8 corridor, so we know that those will be addressed with that. And so staff really feels it's appropriate to look at utilizing our limited resources the most efficient way that we can. And we came to a consensus that Hawk Meadows neighborhood is the appropriate fix. There's literally thousands of potholes forming. That's gonna require extensive attention for our public works staff. We have other neighborhoods that are really kind of close behind that in similar situations that we'll look at subsequent years. And that project is the Thornbeck neighborhood. One of those segments of roads already is passed where we can't do a mill and overlay. And that's what we're really trying to guard against and not tackling a reconstruction project. And so that is a project that we feel will follow very soon thereafter as a recommendation. And we'd like to group these projects together rather than have, you know, one road in this neighborhood and then another year over here and really kind of having this patch quilt of an approach. And so this happens to be immediately adjacent to our 2024 project, which will be completed in 2025. So it's right in directly adjacent, and so we feel that is an advantage as well. This project that we're looking at undertaking is probably in that $650,000 range, so it's smaller than those that we've used in the past, but that's also because we have some limited resources and we're building that account to help address a larger neighborhood here in a future year. And so that is staff's recommendation, along with Public Works. We've all come to that consensus that is the appropriate project for this next year.
Perfect. Questions from council? We'll start with Member Yeager.
Okay, well, so this pavement management plan has been, what, since 2023? When do you anticipate, like what month do you anticipate we see this?
It was completed in the fall of 2024. So we did that in 2024. We always go through and want to verify, right? So this is something that was done with AI, right? And so even you know, so we go and we look at and compare the 2021 to the 2024 and review results. And so Public Works has started that process and gone through just to verify, does it make sense for what they see as well? And so we did get some initial comments. They're quite busy, and so they're working on developing and providing just some feedback to us. We always do that with every project, and so I would expect that that would be done. I know that they've done probably 99% of it already, and so it's just a matter of getting that reviewed. We certainly can share that, I would think, within the next month or so with City Council, and then we'd like to update the CIP as well and bring that back to City Council just to look, and we always share that with the public and get that on the city's website, and so that's not far behind here, but we do want to make sure this process gets moving so that we can get this going. We don't see a lot of different options for moving forward, and so we feel it's appropriate to at least start that public improvement process, because it does take some time to get through that.
Okay. Now, Thornbeck was in the same project as Hawk Meadows, and that was scheduled for this year, according to the last map.
Right.
So why was Thornbeck removed?
Well, just the sheer size of the project is something that we don't have the resources for right now. And speaking with Mr. Linwood, and Mr. Linwood, if you'd like to speak, you certainly can to that. But certainly, looking to limit the size of the project, we do potentially have the ability to use state aid funds within Thornbeck as well. Not right now, we can't, and so we want to make sure that we utilize our resources that are somewhat limited, and that's kind of the target size project that we were given to work with, and so we identified that.
Okay, so when do we anticipate Thornbeck?
There's certainly some factors there, and Mr. Lemon, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and I think we'll continue as we get the information back from the pavement management index on this, as we continue to look at our current fund balances. I think that's definitely one that we're gonna have to, it is such a large project and probably prove to be a costly one, that we will wanna use some of those state aid dollars and let that, as Mr. Erickson stated, it's been growing back up since 2024. But until then, I think we probably go through that with council. I don't know if I have a staff recommendation on that yet, but I would think we're probably at least a year or two off from that Thornbeck project at this point. Just to let that those state aid dollars get back up to a point where we can actually do the entirety of that project in there. I think that's one thing that we kind of talked about when we were doing this, that there is a lot of similarity with a lot of the roads in there, and that's what we've tried to do in the past in regards to the condition and for assessments and things like that, to make sure that we have uniformity and to kind of be able to take care of that is one of the largest projects on our CIP, and to kind of be able to do it all at once.
Will Thornbeck deteriorate such that it moves beyond to mill and overlay?
One roadway is 259th Street.
Well, I was going to ask you about that next, because 259th is an anomaly from Thornbeck. It's a lot older. It doesn't, it's just shot. I've had residents, when I walk by there, complaining.
Right.
And so and I did explain to the one resident why it would be included with Thornbeck rather than with Glen Oak.
Yeah.
And that one definitely calls for reconstruction.
Correct.
If we're not gonna get to it until we get to Thornbeck, what are we gonna do about that street in the meantime?
Right, so that was really the two options that we discussed, was 259th Street and Hawk Meadow. 259th Street is already there, right? Whether we wait 1 year or 2 years, it's not gonna change the scope of the project. It will be the same, where Hawk Meadows is an opportunity for us, the
Well,
right
that's
size,
fine.
right? So we have the opportunity to prevent that from getting there. The remaining portion of Thornbeck is really in similar situation, right?
To Hawk
We can't-
Meadows.
Right. I think it's probably not quite as bad, but it's definitely not quite as bad. So that's why we selected Hawk Meadows. But
That's fine.
we feel that we can utilize state aid funds for not all the roadways, because they're not all state aid eligible, right? So it's a combination of state aid funds and city funds, and so that's our next step, right? Is to figure out how we go about doing that, and hopefully we can do that without bonding. That's a little bit more analysis that we'll come back to city council with, and hopefully be able to present what we think that number will be.
Not
and
bonding
when that will be.
Thornbeck, right?
Pardon me?
Are you talking bonding Hawk Meadows or bonding Thornbeck?
Thornbeck. Yeah, hopefully we don't have to either, right? I think that's the desire from.
Well, it
city
wasn't that
council.
Thornbeck was just a mill and overlay, plus we had whatever needed on 259th. So basically, 259th is not gonna, is there any kind of stopgap that we can do
Well,
while you're waiting?
Yeah, so there will be patching. I mean, we talked about that with Public Works staff, and Mr. Reeves, if you'd like to add, but certainly we talked about, there will be areas that do need to be patched. There might be some skin patching there that we don't want, there's areas that, for instance, water can't get over the curb because it's settled, right? And it's trapped on the roadway, and that leads to deterioration even sooner. And so there will be some work that's done there by Public Works staff, or potentially even a small contractor that does some minor
Like the
paving.
big patches?
There may be
for-
some of that, correct?
And this would
Yes,
be
correct.
from like the corner where Ashton Park is down to where it meets Sternbeck? That's the scope of it, right?
Correct, yeah, and so there'll be, I think before we get to that, I think we need to understand the duration and when we feel we'll be able to get to that roadway. And so I think that's part of that, right? We don't want to invest a lot of
No,
patching
but-
money if we think we're gonna get there 1 year following, right? And so I think we'll have to analyze with Mr. Linwood and our financial team to really identify when we think we'll be able to get to that, coupled, between city funds and state aid funds.
Oh, okay. Is that area of 259th eligible for state aid funds?
I don't think 259 is, I think Forest Boulevard Trail
Sure,
is. and
that's what I
don't
would
have a
figure
map of-
that.
Yeah, it has to actually connect all the way to Goodview, which is a state aid road, and so I'd have to confirm, but I don't believe 259th Street is.
Okay. And then last question, we talked about change the assessment policy to assess for mill and overlays. Is that still being considered?
Yes.
Yes, we haven't had any discussion on it recently, but.
But we had
something
it, we've had it in the
that-
past.
We have, yes, correct.
Yep.
And we most likely will be as we move forward here, yes.
Okay, that's it.
Member Schilling?
I think everything was covered that I wanted to ask. So I'm gonna say no questions at this time, and obviously the Thornbeck is my neighborhood, so the longer the.
So, Mr. Erickson, what I'm hearing is that by doing mill and overlays, getting to it, in the end, it's saving money for the city and the residents, is what I'm hearing, correct?
Right.
Because you might have a small hole in your jacket and you can mend it, and it's not very much money to do that. Or you get this big entire tear, you throw it away, you buy a new jacket, right? It's kind of that taking care of a smaller problem, costing less money for the city and for the residents, than having what's kind of happening or has happened in some of the other neighborhoods where it's completely redone and it's millions of dollars, right?
Correct.
So it's being fiscally responsible is what we've done all along, but this is a really good example of that with all the roads that we've been doing, correct?
Correct.
Saving for the coat.
What?
Saving for the coat.
Same with, I know, right? I was trying to think of a better example, but,
one.
okay, I think I started with Member Yeager, okay, so, Member Onstead.
Just a quick question, you were talking about using AI to identify the deterioration of roads. Is that something that you can look at and identify hotspots that are actually getting worse?
Correct.
And to identify a place that you might want to go to first? Over the years, you can see some that's getting bad quicker.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
That's neat technology.
Yeah, it really is.
And are we using that now?
We are,
Yep.
correct, yeah.
Cool.
So many questions on that,
Yeah.
right? Okay. Member Luker,
I have no questions.
I had a question.
you have a
Just,
question?
I need a clarification on
Maybe
what,
something will come to me.
so we are currently not assessing on mill and overlay only, or we are? I wanted a clarification on that.
Have we done a mill and overlay since?
We really haven't.
Not really,
Yeah.
just a mill and overlay, no.
Okay. So that on mill and overlay, curbs stay, I would assume, and then you just do spot patching, just kind of like we've done in the past, is that?
Correct.
correct?
There may be some minor curb repairs
Yep.
throughout, but it will be milling that top layer of pavement off and only replacing the top layer. So
Okay.
the remaining base of, or the remaining base course of pavement will remain in place.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And we are proposing that we would be assessing for the mill and overlay.
But that would
So
require a
that'll-
change in policy.
Correct.
Yep. So we'll
Because
bring-
right now, we just assess the reclamation or reconstruction,
That's right.
and then you have 20 years
Okay.
of not being assessed.
Okay, all right.
When was
Yeah.
the last time we've done a mill and overlay though, where I mean, I can't,
I don't think we have. Yeah, we have not.
You
so
haven't.
we've never really had a policy then where we had to look at and do this, am I?
Right, so we'll make sure before we have any sort of public hearing or anything like that. This is kind of a long process, right? So we'll develop a feasibility study, we'll do survey, do some pavement cores, things like that. So there's a little bit of work here to get to a point where we even, we'll notify the public of the pending project here, not too far down the line, but we'll bring an item back to the city council where we've discussed, that we believe it's appropriate to assess for this. It's gonna last that 15 years or what have you that we have in our policy. It won't be assessed again, right? So we'll bring that back to city council for consideration before we get through that process with the feasibility study to make sure that indeed council wants to do that. That is staff's recommendation, but we will bring that back to city council for consideration.
Yeah, I think it's great that we take that a little bit slower, because if it gets, sometimes it can get out there really crazy, really fast, and that's not our intent.
Right.
Correct, yeah.
Well, I had another question about when you mill and overlay and then wanting to assess. Like right now, the roads on the 2015 road project, like where I'm walking, it's been at about 8-9 years. Now the potholes are beginning to form. Now it's 10 years and I could see bigger areas become, not the cracks, little areas of like where it's wearing away, beginning to form. So how long, I mean, and was a reconstruction. So in light of that, how long would a mill and overlay be expected to last? The same, less?
Yeah, good question. So with a mill and overlay, right, we do see a lot of these shallow potholes, and so that will be completely resolved, but like transverse cracks that go right across the roadway, when we mill and overlay, those will reflect through that pavement eventually, right? And so it is something that there will be continual maintenance on all roadways. Mr. Reeves will coordinate and get crack filling probably within a couple years, 2 or 3 years of the project, because those cracks will reflect through that pavement. But that surface wearing course that we have right now is absolutely obliterated with patches that you see now, and thousands more already formed. And so that's the intent, but it will be something that will last that 15 years. It will require ongoing maintenance. We've looked at some newer products, something called, remind me, it's a corrective asphalt materials, it's a rejuvenator, it's called, you're drawing a blank too.
Yeah.
So we're looking at that. That's a product actually that we have not utilized before. Many communities are starting to look at that.
Oh, it's not
And it's
Demetrius.
reclamite.
It
Yeah,
rejuvenates the maltines in the
Yeah.
material.
So that's something that actually goes down. It's really pretty cost effective, but it is something that actually goes down within the first few years. And so that's something that we're at least contemplating, looking at a test area to make sure that we're doing all we can. Unfortunately, we live in a climate that is very abusive to roadways, and so we certainly do the best that we can, and we utilize the best specifications that are available to us and the material testing that is available to us, but certainly our weather is not conducive for real long-lasting roadways.
Right, but what I was trying to get at was if in a reconstruction, if it's starting to show a lot of wear after 10 years and you're assessed, and we were assessed for 10 years, when you do a mill and overlay, how, more quantified than, yes, it will reflect, the cracks will reflect through, well, how long will that take? And are you going to be assessing, people still paying their assessment when the crack reflects through the mill and overlay?
Oh, absolutely, they will, yeah.
Mr. Erickson, can I ask you a question, a follow-up to that? Doesn't it depend on weather and winter and rain and all of those conditions? So it's kind of hard to put a
Whether there's a
set
full tree canopy over the roadway, how
Yeah.
quickly it dries out, there's millions of factors, right? And so it's
Yeah.
hard to
Put
quantify exactly.
year time on that,
Yeah.
okay.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, because personally, I don't think it looks good if you're still paying the assessment and your road's looking like crud.
Yeah, every road will have a crack in it before an assessment is completed, no matter what. Yeah, there will. The pavements just cannot You know, the extreme temperatures that we go through, pavements move slower than the temperature in the air, right? But, you know, from the heat, you know, over 100 degrees to 40 below, right? Pavements don't move with our temperatures that we have here, and so there's thermal cracking. And it is large masses of pavement, they just don't hold together like that. So it's just,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, it's hard to tell. Member Schilling?
Thurnbeck, that's 22 years old currently, correct?
Yes.
2002, 2003 is when,
Early 2000s approximately.
because when that was going in, I actually looked at buying a home building up here at that time, when that went in. So, I mean, in all honesty, that's held up pretty good in my mind for 22, 23 years.
right.
And I know you guys have gone through and done the oil and gravel. I think you've done it once since we've been in this house, so. I mean, that's a pretty good holdup in my opinion, but.
So it won't get, your pavement won't get to 30 years without a mill and overlay
Right,
typically, right?
right.
And so,
Yep.
so that's what we're looking at, is that intermediate step to get that pavement out to that full life cycle. So
right.
we know there's a lot of work that goes into keeping roads up, but then ultimately we get to a point where they will require mill and overlay. And I believe Hawk Meadows was constructed in the late 90s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So even just a little bit older than Thurnbeck.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we need to approve a resolution 250214, a resolution authorizing the preparation of a feasibility study for the 2025 street improvement project. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Member Luker. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Schilling. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. Last on our agenda, number 17, to consider a city council work session on February 18th, 2025. Has everybody checked their calendars first off? Okay, just before meeting. Mr. Linwood.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. This is an annual exercise we do just for our goal setting initiatives. This is something that the council develops and work with staff on, and it helps to direct our work priorities for the year of 2025 and going forward. So we'd like to do this on Tuesday, February 18th at 5:30 p.m.
Okay, we're all good?
Yes.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve adding the city council work session on to February 18th, 2025, just before our council meeting. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Member Schilling. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. Council reports. Let's start with Member Yeager.
Oh, no report. Thanks, guys, for coming, and thank you all for watching.
Member Schilling.
No report. Thank you for coming. Thanks, those watching.
All right. Member Luker.
I attended the joint sewage meeting, not this Monday, but last Monday.
Okay. And Member Onstad.
Thanks for everybody for coming. I attended the Park Advisory Commission meeting yesterday, and it was a very good meeting.
Awesome. All right. And it was a quiet couple weeks for me. I also attended the Chisago Lakes Joint Sewer Committee as well. We're doing some great things there, many things we're looking into, and it's been very interesting 5 years. So thanks everybody for watching. We do need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn by Member Luker, a second.
Second.
Second by Member Schilling. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned at